Let's talk. Let's let Rod Rosenstein, the Assistant Attorney General, talk about the indictments. This is cut number one. He'll just tell what the indictments were.
Information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. They used stolen or fictitious American identities, fraudulent bank accounts, and false identification documents. The defendants posed as politically and socially active Americans, advocating for and against particular candidates. They established social media pages and groups to communicate with unwitting Americans. They also purchased political advertisements on social media networks. The Russians also recruited and paid real Americans to engage in political activities, promote political campaigns, and stage political rallies. The defendants and their co-conspirators pretended to be grassroots activists. According to the indictment, the Americans did not know that they were communicating with Russians.
And don't get me wrong, I think these guys should be indicted, but it's just like I said, they're never going to be tried. So it's just a kind of flare that he's sending. I don't know why he felt this was important to do it, maybe to make it clear that something was going on. But I think we can all assume that something like this is always going on with our enemies and that we do it to them, too. And this is kind of disinformation. One of the funniest parts of it was that they would call up and try and get information of how they could be most effective in sowing discord. And somebody said to them, you know, you want to concentrate on the purple states, right? You want to concentrate on the, like that's a really piece of secret information we didn't want the Russians to have. So somebody asked, John Podesta was, of course, the head of the Clinton campaign. So somebody asked him this question. This is cut number 8.
How is it that these Russian operatives knew to focus on purple states like Michigan and Wisconsin, and your campaign didn't?
Well, of course, we spent a lot of time and energy and effort in all those states.
Hillary Clinton herself did not spend much time in those states.
You know, we had Tim Kaine was there, Barack Obama was in, and she spent enormous time in Pennsylvania and Michigan.
Sure.
And we spent a lot of effort. We had more staff in Wisconsin than even President Obama had in 2012.
So now let's listen to Rod Rosenstein talk about the effect of the did this affect the election? Number 9.
There's no allegation in the indictment of any effect on the outcome of the election.
And now let's listen to John Podesta talk about this, because what I want to talk about now is how this was reported. Cut number 7.
I think that this active measures effort by the Russians could have tilted the election in Donald Trump's favor. But I think what the real issue is you know, how he's reacted to it. And in that context, if this is information warfare, then I think he's the first draft dodger in the war.
So let's talk about this. Who reacted to what? Jonathan Alter, this leftist reporter who used to be with Newsweek when there was a Newsweek, he sent out a tweet. Read the full indictment, which I did, by the way. I read every word of this indictment. It's like 39 pages. Read the full indictment to see how much evidence Mueller has for an attack that, but for the loss of life, is as bad as Pearl Harbor. This was as bad as Pearl Harbor. And yes, the Russians may well have tipped the election to Trump. Now, the people who were put out the indictment, the Justice Department says there's no evidence that this tilted the election. But Jonathan Alter, he knows. And for the best one, let's take a trip to Knucklehead Road at the New York Times. Oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, oh. Let's go waltzing down to Knucklehead Road. So here's Thomas Friedman, one of the chief knuckleheads on Knucklehead Row. Right, we just heard that it had no effect on the election. We saw that it was kind of a Marx Brothers, Keystone Cops kind of affair, the whole thing. There's a bunch of trolls, you know, they send him over to do this stuff. You know, it didn't have any effect. It was probably not that competent, but, you know, glad they're indicted, glad it's exposed, whatever. Here's Thomas Friedman. Our democracy is in serious danger. President Trump is either totally compromised by the Russians or is a towering fool, or both. But either way, he has shown himself unwilling or unable to defend America against a Russian campaign to divide and undermine our democracy. This is what people are getting at the New York Times. And by the way, when I speak to my kind of liberal-leaning friends in New York, this is what is going into their heads, you know. They think like the country is in crisis. That is either Trump's real estate, this is Thomas Friedman, you can tell by the voice, that is either Trump's real estate empire has taken large amounts of money from shady oligarchs linked to the Kremlin, so much that they literally own him, or rumors are true that he engaged in sexual misbehavior while he was in Moscow running the Miss Universe contest, which Russian intelligence has on tape and he doesn't want released, or Trump actually believes Russian President Vladimir Putin when he says he is innocent of intervening in our elections. Now, this is the old trick, which we have talked about a million times, that they take the stuff that Trump says and they give it. Trump is not the most articulate person. He does not speak very exactly. And they take the worst version of what he says. So Trump said this is a hoax. He obviously meant the idea that he was colluding with the Russians was a hoax. The other thing that he said was he went to talk to Putin and he said Putin denies it. You know, I brought it up. He denies it. And everybody says, well, he believes Putin. He didn't say that. What he said was, I'm sitting there with the guy. What do you want me to do? You know, reach across the table and strangle him? He denies it. So now Trump is getting ticked. He's sitting in Mar-a-Lago and he's watching TV and he is absolutely furious that they're blaming him for something he knows he didn't do. And he starts sending out tweets. And you always can tell when the press says, oh, my God, an unhinged tweet storm, that he's basically just telling the truth. So Trump says it was the goal of Russia, this is one of his tweets, to create discord, disruption, and chaos within the U.S. If it was the goal of Russia to create discord, disruption, and chaos within the U.S., then with all of the committee hearings, investigations, and party hatred, they have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They are laughing their asses off in Moscow. Get smart, America. And what's the reaction of the That's perfectly true, right? It's perfectly true. If these Russians had actually wanted to spread disinformation in order to sow discord in America, they just should have gotten jobs at CNN. That would have solved the entire problem. You know, so he puts that out. What is Brian Stelter, the potato head over at CNN, said? This is number 3, his reaction to this tweet.
I don't know. Maybe down at Mar-a-Lago, maybe in person, President Trump is cool, calm, and collected. But on Twitter, he sounds deeply troubled. He sounds unhinged. This is why questions about his fitness for office are so urgent. This is the biggest story that I see happening right now.
What Mr. Potato Head sees is that the president is insane. Why? Why shouldn't he be ticked off? You spent a year of his presidency while he cut taxes, while he rolled back regulations, while he put constitutional judges in place. You see, the whole year of his presidency has been this clown and his ilk talking about this Russian collusion with a bunch of trolls that never happened. I mean, it is unbelievable. And now we're supposed to believe that democracy is on shaky ground. This horrible crisis is on shaky ground because the president is basically shrugging off what he knew was happening, what we all know is happening all the time.